"Your kids can eat when they get home," my mom said, tossing them napkins while my sister's daughters opened $65 pasta and dessert boxes. Her husband laughed. "Should have fed them first." I just whispered, "Copy that." When the waiter came back, I stood up and said, "There are moments in life that hit you like a punch to the gut, moments that shatter illusions you've clung to for decades." For me, it wasn't some grand betrayal, but a simple, dismissive line from my own mother at her extravagant 60th birthday dinner, a line that finally snapped something inside me, forcing me to confront a lifetime of injustice. So, there I was, Daniel, 32 years old, sitting in this unbelievably fancy restaurant, Bissimo. I mean, the table alone probably cost more than my first car. It was my mom's 60th birthday, and after a decade building my own life in tech, I'd finally moved back home, stupidly hoping maybe, just maybe, things had changed. Spoiler alert, they hadn't. Not one bit. And as my twin nieces, Lily and Zoe, whined about their untouched $65 pasta, something inside me just shifted. That night, something was going to break, something had to break, and it was going to be this lifetime of imbalance, this constant, draining inequality. Growing up, it was just me, my mom, and my older sister, Jessica, in this small, 3-bedroom house. My dad left when I was 4, and honestly, my memories of him are just these hazy fragments, a deep laugh, the smell of motor oil, then the sound of the front door closing, one last time. His leaving, it created this huge, gaping hole in our family, and somehow, that void twisted everything, especially how my mom saw us. I wouldn't understand just how much until much, much later. From the absolute earliest I can remember, it was crystal clear. Jessica had this special, almost sacred, place in my mom's heart. Maybe it was those hazel eyes, that dimpled smile, just like my dad's. Or maybe she was the first, the trailblazer. Whatever the reason, that favoritism wasn't just a phase. It was undeniable. It was consistent. It was the air I breathed throughout my entire childhood. Jessica needed new clothes? Boom, off to the mall. My jeans were too short? Here's a plastic bag from Goodwill. Jessica wanted cheerleading? Mom found the money, the uniforms, the camp. Me? I wanted to join the science club, which, by the way, was probably the only thing that kept me sane. I was told to find a way to pay for it yourself, Daniel. And when I dared to question it, Mom would just sigh and say, "Jessica's more sensitive, Daniel. She needs more support. You? Oh, you're so independent. You can handle things." And so I did. I handled things. By 14, I was mowing lawns, shoveling driveways, just to buy my own school supplies. By 16, I was working 20 hours a week at a grocery store, pulling down a 4.0 GPA. Meanwhile, Jessica barely scraped by, spent her weekends partying, and Mom conveniently looked the other way. College? That was the clearest, most brutal example of the chasm between us. I got exactly $0 towards my education. Zero. I worked multiple jobs, applied for every scholarship I could find, and still graduated with loans that took me 7 years to pay off. Jessica? Her tuition was fully paid at a private college. She lasted 3 semesters before dropping out to marry Thomas. Oh, Thomas. Thomas came from money. Old money. Capital M money. His family owned this massive chain of car dealerships, and he'd never known a day of financial worry in his life. Jessica, predictably, was completely dazzled. Within a year, they were married in a ceremony that probably cost more than most people's houses. My mom. To her, Thomas was the ultimate catch. He represented everything she'd ever wanted but never, ever achieved herself. Financial security, social status, a lifestyle straight out of a magazine. The fact that Thomas treated service workers like dirt or casually dropped racist comments at family gatherings. Apparently irrelevant. He had money. And in my mother's world, that was the only thing that truly mattered. While all that was happening, I was quietly building my own success story. After grinding my way through a computer science degree, I landed a job at this tiny startup. It eventually went public, and I climbed those ranks faster than I ever thought possible. I was known for being good with code, but also good with people, managing teams effectively. I lived below my means, invested smart, and by 30, I had the kind of financial security most people work their entire lives to achieve. But I never, ever flaunted it. Part of it was just my nature, you know? But a huge part was knowing that my family would immediately see me as a resource. Not a person, just the thing to be used. Jessica and Thomas had their twin girls, Lily and Zoe, when they were 26. They were cute, bright, and utterly, absolutely spoiled. From the moment they were born, they got everything they so much as pointed a finger at. Newest iPhone. Done. Designer clothes for elementary school? Of course. Extravagant birthday parties with ponies and professional photographers? A necessity, apparently. I really tried to be a good uncle, even from across the country. I'd send thoughtful gifts, books about science and space, craft kits, museum memberships. I tried a video chat, but Jessica always found a way to poison that relationship. "Oh, Uncle Daniel's too busy with his computer job to visit," she'd say, within earshot of them during our calls. Or she'd forget to have them write thank you notes for my gifts, while making sure elaborate cards went out for Thomas's parents. And my mom. Predictably, she thought Jessica was the greatest parent on earth. "She's so devoted to those girls, Daniel," she'd gush on our monthly phone calls. "They're so well-behaved and polite. Jessica is really raising them right." This, despite the fact that every single time I saw them, the twins were glued to tablets, constantly interrupting adult conversations, throwing full-blown tantrums if they didn't get their way. But in my mother's eyes, Jessica could do no wrong. And by extension, her parenting was beyond reproach. Then, Mom turned 59, and she had this minor health scare. Nothing life-threatening, thankfully. But it was enough to make me rethink the distance I'd put between myself and my family. Despite our complicated, painful history, she was still my mother. So, after a lot of agonizing, I decided to move back to my hometown. Bought a modest, but comfortable house about 15 minutes from her. I told myself it was for medical emergencies, you know? But deep down, a part of me still hoped for that maternal connection I'd never really had. Jessica, of course, was suspicious from day one. "What happened, Daniel? Did your fancy job finally fire you?" she sneered the first time I saw her. "No," I explained, trying to keep my voice even. "Still with the same company. I can work remotely now." She just scoffed. "Must be nice to have everything handed to you." The sheer, breathtaking irony of that statement almost made me laugh out loud. Almost. So yeah, this was the family dynamic I'd willingly returned to. A sister who resented my success despite her own ridiculously privileged life. A mother who was completely blind to the inequality she'd created. And me? Still, stupidly, trying to earn an approval I knew, deep down, would never, ever come. Then came Mom's 60th birthday, and the dinner that would finally force me to confront all of it. As Mom's 60th approached, I saw it as a desperate, last-ditch effort to connect. I called her, suggested dinner at Bissimo, the most expensive restaurant in town. We're talking 3-month waiting lists, appetizers starting at $40. "Oh, that sounds lovely, Daniel," she chirped, sounding genuinely happy. Then, the inevitable. Jessica and Thomas should come, too, of course. Of course, I agreed, because I'd already known that was coming. Then I pushed, just a little. I was thinking just adults, though, Mom. A sophisticated evening out. A pause. A loaded pause. "Well, Daniel, Jessica won't want to leave the girls. You know how attached they are. And it wouldn't be a proper celebration without my granddaughters." I bit back the objection. 10-year-olds at a place where people proposed and celebrated anniversaries? Not ideal. But I'd learned long ago that arguing with Mom about Jessica's kids was utterly pointless. "Sure, Mom," I said, forcing a smile. "Whatever will make you happy. It's your birthday." So, I made the reservation for 6 people, requested the best table by the window, and left my credit card on file. When the hostess asked if it was a special occasion, I explained it was Mom's 60th and asked for something special for dessert. She promised to make it memorable. I wanted it to be memorable. For her. For us. In the weeks leading up to the dinner, I spent hours searching for the perfect gift. I finally found it. A vintage brooch, almost identical to one her grandmother had owned. One Mom always talked about missing after it was lost during a move when I was a kid. I had it professionally cleaned, placed it in a velvet box with a heartfelt, handwritten note. On the night of the dinner, I arrived 20 minutes early, looking sharp in a tailored suit I'd picked up on a business trip. The hostess led me to our table, prime real estate, right near the windows overlooking the river. It was already set with fine china, crystal, and a small arrangement of Mom's favorite flowers, which I'd prearranged. My mom arrived 5 minutes late, wearing a new dress I'd never seen. She gave me a quick hug, then immediately asked, "Are Jessica and the family here yet?" "Not yet, Mom," I said, pulling out her chair. "You look beautiful. Happy birthday." "Thank you, dear," she said, her eyes already scanning the room. "Jessica helped me pick out this dress. She has such good taste." I nodded, handing her my small, carefully wrapped gift. "I got you something. Hope you like it." She took it with a distracted smile. "Oh, that's sweet. I'll open it later, when everyone's here." We sat in this awkward silence for what felt like forever. I tried making conversation, her garden, her book club, my new house, anything to fill the void. But her answers were perfunctory, her eyes constantly darting to the restaurant entrance, clearly waiting for them. Finally, 35 minutes past our reservation time, Jessica, Thomas, and the twins arrived in a whirlwind of noise and motion. Jessica was in a new designer dress, Thomas in a casual blazer that somehow still looked more expensive than my tailored suit. The twins, Lily and Zoe, were in matching outfits that were far too formal for 10-year-olds. "Sorry we're late, Mom," Jessica trilled, bending to kiss her cheek. The girls couldn't decide what to wear. And then Thomas had a work call. "It's fine, sweetheart," Mom gushed, standing to embrace her, her face lighting up in a way it absolutely hadn't when I arrived. Thomas gave me a cursory nod. "Daniel, still doing the computer thing? Software development?" "Yes," I replied, extending my hand, which he shook with the limp grip of someone who's never had to prove himself. Good, good. Someone's got to do the tech support, right?" He laughed at his own joke. I just swallowed my annoyance. It was already starting. I tried to connect with my nieces. "Hi, Lily." "Hi, Zoe. Good to see you both." They barely looked up from the iPads they'd brought with them, the volume blaring loud enough that other diners were already glancing over, annoyed. "Girls, say hello to your uncle," Jessica prompted, half-heartedly. "Hi." They mumbled in unison, eyes glued to their screens. As everyone settled, I noticed Mom had strategically placed herself between Jessica and the twins, with Thomas on Jessica's other side. I was alone on the opposite side of the table, physically isolated from the family unit. "So, Mom opened her gift for me this morning," Jessica announced, touching Mom's arm. "Show him, Mom." Mom pulled back her sleeve to reveal a thin gold bracelet with a small diamond charm. "Isn't it beautiful?" Jessica and Thomas got it from that jewelry store in the city. "It's lovely," I said, genuinely, glancing at my unopened gift still by her plate. She followed my gaze but made no move to open it. The waiter approached for drink orders. Mom and Jessica got white wine. Thomas, of course, requested their most expensive bourbon. Neat. I just asked for water. When the waiter asked about the kids, Jessica waved her hand. "They'll just have water. They don't like the fancy sodas anyway." I saw both girls look up, their faces clearly saying that wasn't true, but they stayed silent. As we looked at menus, Lily and Zoe kept playing their games, the constant pinging and chiming creating this relentless distraction. An elderly couple at the next table was openly frowning. "Maybe the girls could use headphones?" I suggested gently. "Or turn the volume down a bit." Jessica shot me this irritated glare. "They're fine. They're just playing." "I know, but this is a pretty quiet restaurant." "And Daniel," Mom interrupted, "don't make a fuss. The girls are just entertaining themselves." I just nodded, returning to my menu, feeling that familiar, bitter sting of being the only one ever expected to adjust my behavior. It never ended. Thomas, meanwhile, was loudly discussing the wine list, making a huge show of his knowledge. "We'll take a bottle of the Chateau Margaux for the table," he declared, pointing to one of the most absurdly expensive options, $300 a bottle. The waiter glanced at me, clearly identifying me as the one paying. I gave a small nod, even as I felt the price tag click up in my head. Mom beamed at Thomas. "You always know the best wines." "It's a gift," he replied with false modesty. "Speaking of gifts, Daniel," he said, turning to me, "what exactly do you do at that tech company again?" "Something with websites." Before I could even answer, Mom cut in. "Daniel does something with computers, but let me tell you what Zoe did at her piano recital last week. She was absolutely brilliant." And just like that, any chance I had to share my recent promotion, Senior Director of Engineering, a 100-person team, multi-million-dollar budget, was gone, vanished, replaced by a detailed account of my niece playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with two hands. I sat there, utterly invisible, watching my family erase me, wondering why I ever thought this time would be different. The waiter came back with Thomas's chosen wine, pouring it for everyone except me. I still had my water. He asked if we were ready to order. "I'll have the filet mignon, rare," Thomas announced without even looking at the menu. Jessica studied her options. "The lobster risotto sounds amazing." "Get whatever you want, sweetheart," Mom encouraged. "Daniel's paying." She said it without even looking at me, like my wallet was a separate entity, completely detached from me. "Daniel." "I'll have the duck confit," Mom decided. When it was my turn, I started. "The salmon looks..." "Mom, shouldn't you try the prime rib?" Jessica interrupted. "You always say you love a good prime rib." Mom immediately changed her mind. "You're right, Jessica. I'll change to the prime rib." The waiter made the adjustment without a word, then turned to the twins. "And for the young ladies?" Jessica didn't even consult them. "They'll both have the truffle pasta. And can you bring extra Parmesan on the side?" I glanced at the menu again. $65 per plate. For 10-year-olds. And from the bored expressions on their faces, I doubted they even knew what truffles were. "Are you sure they'll eat that?" I asked cautiously. "I don't mind taking them somewhere more kid-friendly after this if they'd prefer something simpler." Jessica's face hardened. "They're fine here. They need to learn to appreciate fine dining." "I was just thinking they might enjoy." "They're fine," Jessica repeated, cutting me off, her voice firm. "I think it's wonderful that Jessica exposes the girls to sophisticated experiences," Mom added. "When you and Jessica were young, I could never afford to take you to places like this." I bit back the automatic retort that Jessica never had to work for anything, while I'd scraped and sacrificed for every single opportunity. Instead, I just nodded, took a sip of water. "Keep the peace, Daniel. Just one dinner. Don't make a scene." Thomas launched into a loud story about a golf trip. Mom and Jessica hung on every word, laughing at all the right moments. I sat silently. The twins went back to their tablets, volume somehow even louder. I actually had some good news I wanted to share. I tried again. And then on the 17th hole, Thomas continued, not missing a beat. This was my life. Always the extra, never the main character. A server walked by with desserts, and Lily and Zoe's eyes went wide. "Can we get dessert now?" Lily asked. The first words she'd spoken all night. "Dinner hasn't even come yet," Jessica snapped. "You need to eat your meal first." "But I'm hungry now," Zoe whined, finally putting down her iPad. "You should have eaten before we left the house," Jessica said dismissively. I saw an opening to connect with them. "Are you guys hungry? The bread basket should be coming soon." Lily nodded eagerly. "I didn't like the sandwich Mom made us." Jessica shot her a warning look. "The sandwich was fine. You're just being picky again." The bread arrived. Both girls reached for it. Jessica slapped Zoe's hand. "Ladies, don't grab. Wait to be offered." Zoe pulled back, lower lip trembling. I reached for the basket, offered it to them. "Here you go. Try the olive bread. It looks delicious." My mother frowned at me. "Jessica is trying to teach the girls manners, Daniel. Don't undermine her." "I'm not undermining anyone," I said, keeping my voice level. "They said they were hungry." "You've never had children," Jessica said with a condescending smile. "You don't understand the importance of consistent boundaries." I wanted to scream. I wanted to point out her boundaries only applied when convenient, not when her kids were disrupting an entire restaurant. But I didn't. Keep the peace. Then, a memory flashed through my mind. Jessica, breaking Mom's favorite vase, blaming me. Mom grounded me for 2 weeks, didn't even ask for my side. When I protested, another week for lying. A small injustice, sure, but it was the blueprint. Our entire family dynamic, right there. Appetizers arrived. The waiter asked if everything was satisfactory. "These children are being very disruptive," a voice snapped from the next table. It was the elderly gentleman. "Some of us are trying to have a peaceful evening." Before I could respond, Thomas puffed up. "Mind your own business, old man. They're kids, for Christ's sake." The situation was spiraling. I opened my mouth to comment, but Mom spoke first. "Daniel, can't you say something to that man? He's ruining my birthday dinner." Of course. It was my responsibility to fix it. I was the only one who had suggested they lower the volume. But I turned to the man, said quietly, "I apologize for the disruption, sir. We'll try to keep it down." "Don't apologize to him," Jessica hissed. "My girls have every right to be here." The tension was unbearable, and we hadn't even gotten our main courses yet. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment, needing to breathe. In the elegant bathroom, I stared at my reflection. When did I become this person? This doormat who sat silently while his own family disrespected and dismissed him? When did I decide that keeping the peace was worth sacrificing my self-respect? And more importantly, when would it ever end if I didn't find the courage to change it? I splashed cold water on my face, took a deep, shuddering breath. Maybe it was time to stop playing the role I'd been assigned in this family drama. Maybe it was time to rewrite the script. With that thought, a strange sense of calm settled over me. I walked back to the table, where our main courses had just been served, ready for the next act of our long-running dysfunction to play out. My salmon looked perfect. I took a bite. Delicious. Thomas attacked his steak. Mom and Jessica made appreciative noises. The twins, though, less impressed. "This looks gross," Lily announced, poking a truffle shaving. "What are these black things?" Zoe asked, wrinkling her nose. "They're truffles," Jessica explained, forced patience in her voice. "Very expensive. People with sophisticated palates love them." Zoe pushed her plate away. "It smells weird. I don't want it." "Me neither," Lily agreed. Jessica flushed. "Girls, we talked about trying new foods. Just 3 bites. I'm not eating it," Zoe declared, her voice rising towards a tantrum. "I want chicken fingers." Thomas didn't even look up. "Jessica, handle this." Mom jumped in. "They're probably just tired. It's been a long day." Other diners were openly staring now. "I could share some of my salmon," I offered. "It's not too strong-flavored." "They need to eat what they ordered," Jessica insisted, oblivious to the fact she ordered it for them. "I'm hungry," Lily complained, trembling. "Me too," Zoe added. I genuinely felt bad for them. They were just kids, hungry, at a restaurant, with food they didn't want. And their parents didn't care. And then it happened. The moment that would shatter everything. "Your kids can eat when they get home," Mom said, dismissively, tossing them napkins, looking at their untouched plates like they were an inconvenience. No attempt to mask her indifference. Thomas looked up from his phone just long enough to laugh. "Should have fed them first, I guess." I just stared at my mom, at Jessica, at Thomas. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were the same people who indulged the twins' every whim, who never said no to anything. Now, suddenly, their hunger was bothersome because it interfered with the adults' dinner. "Copy that," I whispered, more to myself than anyone. Something snapped inside me. A lifetime of accumulated injustices, of double standards, it all crystallized in that single, searing moment. The waiter approached. "Is everything to your satisfaction?" he asked, eyeing the untouched pasta. I looked at my niece's disappointed faces, at Jessica's irritation, Mom's indifference, Thomas's smug disinterest. I thought about every time I'd swallowed my feelings to keep the peace. Every time I'd accepted being treated as less than, every time I'd paid, literally and figuratively, for the privilege of being ignored by my own family. And then I stood up. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I'd like to order something else for my nieces. They don't care for the truffle pasta." The waiter nodded, visibly relieved. "Of course, sir. What would they prefer?" Before Jessica could even open her mouth, I asked the girls directly, "What would you like to eat?" "They can make you almost anything." Their eyes widened, surprised to be consulted. "Could I have spaghetti with butter and maybe some broccoli?" Lily asked. "Of course," I said, then looked at Zoe. "Chicken?" she asked tentatively. "Like chicken fingers?" The waiter smiled. "We have an excellent herb-roasted chicken breast. I can ask the chef to prepare it simply, cut into strips. Would that work?" Zoe nodded eagerly. "Wonderful," I said. "And could we get those started right away? The girls are quite hungry." "Daniel," Jessica hissed across the table. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm making sure my nieces don't go hungry," I replied calmly. "Cancel that order," Jessica told the waiter. "The girls will eat their pasta, or wait until we get home." The waiter hesitated, caught in the family crossfire. I reached for my wallet, handed him my credit card. "Please process the new order and bring the children's meals as soon as they're ready." My mother's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Daniel," she whispered harshly, "you're embarrassing us. Stop this right now." Thomas puffed up, ready to assert his authority. "You don't get to override our parenting decisions. Those are our kids." I turned to face him directly. "Yes, they are your kids. Your kids who are sitting here hungry while you check emails and laugh about not feeding them." The twins watched, wide-eyed. and used to seeing adults in conflict, especially over their well-being. "Sir," the waiter asked uncertainly, my credit card still in his hand. "Please place the order," I said firmly. "And when you have a moment, I'd like to speak with the manager about adding a special dessert for my mother's birthday." Jessica looked like she was about to explode. But with other diners now openly watching, she kept her voice low. "You have no right. No right at all. I have every right to make sure children don't go hungry when I can do something about it," I replied, my voice still even. Just like I had every right to expect equal treatment growing up. Just like I have the right to be acknowledged at a dinner I'm paying for. "Is this what this is about?" Mom demanded. "Money? You've always been so materialistic, Daniel." The bitter irony of that statement, from a woman who had favored her daughter for marrying into wealth, was not lost on me. But for the first time, instead of swallowing the injustice, I addressed it directly. "This isn't about money, Mom. It's about respect. It's about treating people fairly. It's about 30 years of being the family afterthought while you and Jessica take and take without ever giving back." "That's not true," Jessica protested. "Isn't it?" I asked quietly. "When was the last time either of you asked about my life, my work, my happiness? When was the last time you treated me with the same consideration you expect for yourselves?" A man in a suit, the manager, approached. "Is everything all right here?" he asked diplomatically. I nodded. "Yes, thank you. A misunderstanding about my niece's meals. We've sorted it out now. They'll be having the chicken and the buttered pasta instead of the truffle pasta." The manager looked relieved. "Of course, sir. We'll have those out right away." My mother stood up abruptly. "I think we should leave. This dinner is ruined." "If that's what you want," I said calmly. "The bill is already covered. But the girls haven't eaten yet, and you haven't had your birthday dessert." "I don't want dessert," she snapped. "I want my son to stop making a scene." "I'm not making a scene, Mom. I'm finally speaking up after a lifetime of staying silent." Thomas stood as well, trying to be intimidating. "Let's go, Jessica. Bring the girls." Lily looked at her half-full water glass, then at me. "But Uncle Daniel ordered us food." "And I'm still hungry," Zoe added softly. Jessica was trapped. To leave meant admitting she'd take her hungry kids home just to prove a point. To stay meant conceding I was right. "Fine," she gritted out. "We'll wait for their food." "But this conversation isn't over, Daniel." "No," I agreed, as everyone slowly sat back down. "I don't think it is." The silence that descended on our table was heavier than any I could ever remember. But for the first time in my life, I felt the weight of family obligation lifting from my shoulders. It was replaced by this unfamiliar, but incredibly welcome, sensation of standing up for what was right, even if it meant shattering the careful fiction of family harmony we'd maintained for so long. When the waiter returned minutes later with simple plates of food for the twins, their faces just lit up. "Thank you, Uncle Daniel," Lily said, picking up her fork. "You're welcome," I replied, ignoring the daggers being shot my way from the adult members of my family. Sometimes, the most important moments aren't marked by celebration, but by the quiet dignity of finally saying enough. The twins ate their new meals with obvious enjoyment, totally oblivious to the charged atmosphere. My mother stabbed at her prime rib with unnecessary force. Jessica pushed food around her plate, not eating. Thomas drained his bourbon, signaled for another. I, however, continued eating my salmon, determined not to let the tension ruin an excellent meal. The manager approached again, this time with a small cake and a single candle. "I understand we're celebrating a special birthday," he said smoothly, placing it in front of Mom. "Compliments of the house." Mom's expression was this weird, complex mix of anger at me, warring with her deep-seated desire to be celebrated. "Thank you," she managed. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said sincerely. She didn't respond, just nodded tightly at the manager. Once he left, Jessica leaned across the table, her voice low but intense. "I don't know what kind of power trip you're on, Daniel, but undermining our parenting decisions in public is completely unacceptable." "I wasn't undermining your parenting," I replied calmly. "I was feeding hungry children. There's a difference." "You had no right," she began. But I cut her off. "Let's talk about rights, Jessica. Do you have the right to treat me like a walking ATM while excluding me from every conversation? Does Mom have the right to dismiss everything I say while hanging on every word from you and Thomas? Does Thomas have the right to make condescending comments about my career when my annual bonus is probably more than he makes in a year?" Thomas's face darkened. Now wait just a minute. No, you wait, I said. My voice still controlled, but firm. For 32 years I've been waiting. Waiting to be treated with the same respect and consideration that seems to come automatically to everyone else in this family. And I'm done waiting. My mother put down her fork with a clatter. Is that what this childish display is about? You're jealous of your sister? I looked at her directly. This isn't about jealousy, Mom. It's about fairness. It's about acknowledging that you've treated us differently our entire lives, and how much that's hurt me. That's ridiculous, she scoffed. I've always treated you both exactly the same. I couldn't help but laugh. A short, disbelieving sound. Mom, you paid for Jessica's college, but not mine. You babysit the twins whenever Jessica asks. But when I needed you to drive me to the hospital for surgery 3 years ago, you were too busy because Jessica had a spa day scheduled. You call Jessica 3 times a week, but only speak to me when I call you. How is any of that exactly the same? Mom actually looked momentarily uncomfortable. But Jessica jumped in. That's different. I needed help with college. I need help with the girls. You've always been so independent. I was independent because I had to be, I said. No one was going to do things for me the way they did for you. No one was going to make my path easier. Poor Daniel, Jessica said sarcastically. So successful and yet so misunderstood. Yes, I am successful, I acknowledged. But that success came in spite of the family dynamics, not because of them. And my success doesn't mean the inequality doesn't hurt. Thomas, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Look, this is all very touching, but it's ancient history. What's your point? I looked at each of them in turn. My point is that I'm no longer willing to be the family doormat. I'm no longer willing to pay, literally and figuratively, for the privilege of being ignored and disrespected. So what are you saying? Mom asked, a note of genuine concern finally in her voice. You're abandoning your family? I shook my head. No, Mom. I'm setting boundaries with my family. There's a difference. I'm saying that going forward, I expect to be treated with the same respect I show all of you. I expect my thoughts and feelings to be considered. I expect my contributions, financial and otherwise, to be acknowledged rather than just assumed. And if we don't meet these demands? Jessica asked coldly. They're not demands, they're boundaries. I corrected her. And if they're not respected, then I'll need to limit my interaction with the family to protect my own well-being. That's emotional blackmail, she accused. No, Jessica. Emotional blackmail is what Mom did when she told me I didn't love her enough because I couldn't afford to buy her the same expensive Christmas gift you did, despite the fact that I was working 2 jobs to pay my way through college at the time. Mom actually had the decency to flush at that reminder. The twins had finished their meals, looking uncertainly between the adults. Can we have dessert now? Zoe asked tentatively. Before Jessica or Mom could respond, I smiled at my niece. Absolutely. The chocolate lava cake here is amazing. Would you like to try that? Both girls nodded eagerly. I signaled the waiter. 2 chocolate lava cakes for my nieces, please. Jessica didn't object this time. Perhaps the optics were finally too much for her. Instead, she turned her attack in a different direction. You've always been so self-righteous, Daniel, acting like you're better than us because you work in tech and make important decisions. But you know what? At least I have a family who loves me. What do you have? A fancy job title and an empty house. It was a low blow, aimed straight for my single status, my perceived loneliness. But honestly, it wasn't unexpected. Jessica always found my vulnerabilities with unnerving accuracy. I have self-respect, I replied quietly, and people in my life who value me for who I am, not what I can provide for them. That's worth more than you might think. The waiter returned with the twins' desserts, and they dug in with gusto, momentarily lightening the heavy atmosphere. Mom, who had been silent for a few minutes, finally spoke. I don't understand why you're doing this, Daniel. Why ruin my birthday dinner with all this drama? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, saw not just my mother, but a woman who had made choices, some good, some bad, shaped by her own experiences and limitations. I'm not trying to ruin anything, Mom. But after 32 years of swallowing my feelings to keep the peace, I finally reached my breaking point. And maybe that's actually a gift, the gift of honesty. Because continuing as we have been, it's not working. At least, not for me. So, this is all about you, she said dismissively. Partly, yes, I admitted. But it's also about us. About what kind of family we want to be. One that's built on genuine connection and mutual respect, or one that's built on obligation and resentment. Thomas checked his watch conspicuously. Well, this has been fascinating, but I have an early meeting tomorrow. Of course you do, I said, unable to keep the sarcasm from my voice. Don't worry about the bill. It's covered. At least you're good for something, he muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. I let it go. It was a desperate attempt to regain control. His only real power in this family came from his money, and he just realized my financial independence meant he had zero leverage over me. As the twins finished their desserts, Jessica started gathering their things. Girls, wipe your mouths. We're leaving. But Grandma hasn't blown out her candle. Lily protested, pointing to the untouched birthday cake. Mom glanced at the cake, then at me. Something unspoken passed between us. A recognition, perhaps, that this birthday marked more than just another year. It marked the end of a family dynamic that had persisted for decades. I don't feel much like celebrating anymore, she said quietly. I signaled for the check, which arrived promptly along with a box for the untouched cake. The total was just over $800, including the wine and Thomas's expensive bourbon. I added a generous tip and signed without comment. As we all stood to leave, I reached out and lightly touched my mother's arm. Happy birthday, Mom. I hope you know that despite everything, I do love you. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she just nodded and turned away, following Jessica and Thomas toward the exit. The twins lingered briefly. Thank you for the food, Uncle Daniel, Zoe said shyly. And the dessert, Lily added. You're welcome, I replied, smiling at them. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Then they too were gone, hurrying to catch up with their parents, leaving me alone at the table where a family confrontation years in the making had finally played out. I gathered Mom's unopened gift and the boxed cake, feeling strangely light despite the emotional intensity of the evening. Something had shifted irrevocably, and though I wasn't sure exactly what would come next, I knew I would never again silently accept the role of family doormat. Sometimes, the most courageous thing we can do is simply to stand up and say, enough. The valet brought my car around. I tipped him generously, partly out of habit, partly because someone should end this evening better off than they started. I placed the boxed cake and Mom's still unopened gift on the passenger seat, sitting behind the wheel for a moment, just collecting my thoughts. Through the windshield, I saw my family, grouped on the sidewalk about 20 yards away, engaged in what looked like an intense discussion. Jessica gesticulating wildly, Mom nodding. Thomas, of course, scrolling on his phone. The twins hovering at the periphery, their earlier dessert excitement now subdued by the adult tension. I had two choices: drive away and let the evening end, unresolved, or attempt one final conversation. Despite everything, these people were my family. The thought of leaving like this, with so much raw emotion exposed but nothing truly settled, it felt wrong. With a deep breath, I got out of the car and walked toward them. Their conversation died abruptly as I approached. I thought you'd left, Mom said, her tone clipped. I was about to, I replied. But it didn't feel right to end the evening this way. Jessica crossed her arms defensively. What way would you prefer? With more accusations and self-pity? I shook my head. No. With clarity about where we go from here. That's easy. Thomas interjected, finally looking up from his phone. You stay in your lane, and we'll stay in ours. And what lane is that, Thomas? I asked calmly. The one where I pay for expensive dinners, but don't get to speak? The one where I'm expected to provide financial support, but receive no emotional support in return? No one's forcing you to pay for anything, he retorted, though we all knew that wasn't entirely true. The expectation had been set long ago. My role was provider, not participant. This isn't just about money, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. It's about respect. Jessica stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. You completely undermined my parenting in there. You made me look like the bad guy for not letting my children eat whatever they wanted. How is that respectful? Your children were hungry, Jessica. They didn't ask for caviar or lobster, just simple food they could eat. What kind of mother denies her hungry children food that's readily available just to make a point about authority? Don't you dare question my mothering, she hissed. You have no idea what it takes to raise children. You're right. I don't. I conceded. But I know what it feels like to be a child whose needs come second to an adult's pride. I know what it's like to go hungry because someone else is making a point. My mother, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. That's not fair, Daniel. We never let you go hungry. I turned to her. Maybe not physically hungry, Mom, but emotionally? Absolutely. Every time you praised Jessica, but ignored my achievements. Every time you made excuses for her failures, but expected perfection from me. Every time you gave her what she hadn't earned, but made me work for what should have been freely given. Your love and support. I've always loved you both equally, she insisted, though her eyes didn't quite meet mine. Love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's actions. It's choices. And your choices have consistently favored Jessica over me for as long as I can remember. The twins had wandered a few steps away, pretending to be fascinated by a decorative planter, but I could tell they were listening to every single word. Jessica noticed too. Girls, go wait by the car, she commanded. Once they had reluctantly moved out of earshot, she turned back to me. You know what your problem is, Daniel? You can't stand that despite all your money and success, you're still alone. No wife, no kids, just your fancy job and your big empty house. So, you're trying to buy my children's affection to fill the void in your sad little life. It was a deliberately cruel statement, designed to wound me where I was most vulnerable. In the past, I might have just absorbed the blow silently, letting it add to the internal scar tissue I'd accumulated over years of similar attacks. But something had changed tonight. That's not what's happening, Jessica, and I think you know it, I said quietly. I love Lily and Zoe because they're my nieces, not because I'm trying to fill some void. And yes, I'm single, but that doesn't make my life sad or empty. I have friends who value me. I have work that fulfills me. And most importantly, I have the self-respect to walk away from relationships that diminish rather than enhance my life. Thomas stepped forward, physically inserting himself between Jessica and me. I think we're done here. And just so we're clear, after tonight's little performance, you can forget about seeing the girls anytime soon. I looked past him to my nieces by their car, watching us with concerned expressions. Is that really what's best for them? Cutting off their relationship with their uncle because their parents' pride was hurt? Don't pretend this is about the girls, he scoffed. This is about you trying to play the hero. I shook my head. No, Thomas. This is about me finally standing up for myself after a lifetime of being treated as less than. And if part of that means making sure my nieces know they have an uncle who cares about them, who will make sure they don't go hungry even when it's inconvenient for the adults around them, then yes, I'll gladly play that role. My mother, who had been watching with a pinched expression, finally intervened. That's enough, both of you. This is still my birthday, and I won't have it completely ruined by this nonsense. I turned to her, feeling a sudden wave of exhaustion. Decades of emotional labor, of swallowing hurt and making excuses for being treated as an afterthought, had taken their toll. You're right, Mom. It is your birthday, and I genuinely wanted it to be special. That's why I made the reservation. Why I arranged for the flowers. Why I found a gift I thought would mean something to you. I gestured to her still unopened present, visible through my car window. But I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend that it doesn't hurt when you treat me like I don't matter. For a brief moment, something flickered across her face. Recognition, perhaps, or regret. But it was quickly replaced by the defensive anger I was more familiar with. If that's how you feel, maybe it's better if we take some time apart, she said stiffly. Maybe it is. I agreed, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. I love you, Mom. I always will. But I need to love myself, too. And that means not accepting treatment that diminishes me. Jessica made a derisive sound. So dramatic. Always have to make everything about you. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw not the confident, superior person she projected, but someone deeply insecure, someone who needed to diminish others to feel adequate herself. In that moment, I felt a surprising wave of compassion for her. I hope someday we can have a relationship based on mutual respect, Jessica. I really do. Until then, I wish you and your family well. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked back to my car. As I opened the door, I heard the patter of small feet behind me. Uncle Daniel. I turned to find Lily, slightly out of breath. Before I could respond, she threw her arms around my waist in a tight hug. Thank you for the cake, she whispered, and for making sure we got dinner. I hugged her back, careful not to let her see the sudden moisture in my eyes. You're welcome, sweetheart. That's what uncles are for. Lily, get back here right now. Jessica's sharp voice cut through the moment. Lily pulled away reluctantly. I have to go. I know, I said, crouching down to her level. But remember, you can always call me if you need anything. Anything at all. She nodded solemnly, then turned and ran back to her waiting parents. I watched as they loaded the twins into their luxury SUV and drove away without a backward glance. My mother remained on the sidewalk, a solitary figure under the restaurant's elegant portico lighting. Our eyes met briefly across the parking lot. I raised my hand in a small wave. After a moment's hesitation, she returned the gesture, a minimal acknowledgement, but more than I had expected. Then she too turned away, walking toward her car with the slightly stooped posture that had become more pronounced in recent years, a physical reminder of the passage of time that tonight's confrontation had brought into sharp relief. I got into my car and sat for a moment in the quiet darkness, exhaling deeply as the events of the evening washed over me. The dinner had cost me $800 and possibly my relationship with my family. As I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, I wasn't sure if I had lost everything or finally found myself. Driving through the familiar streets toward my empty house, I felt an unexpected sense of peace settling over me. For the first time in my life, I had spoken my truth without apology or compromise. Whatever came next, I would face it as a person who had found the courage to stand up for himself, to demand the respect he deserved. Some prices are worth paying, and some losses are actually gains in disguise. As I pulled into my driveway, I realized that tonight's confrontation had given me something no amount of family approval ever could: the knowledge that I was finally free from the need to seek it. 3 months passed. 3 months of strange, suspended silence. No calls from my mother, no text from Jessica, no invitations to family gatherings. The vintage brooch, my carefully chosen birthday gift for Mom, remained in its velvet box on my mantel, a tangible reminder of a relationship in limbo. At first, the silence was deafening. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to call Mom, a lifetime habit of seeking reconciliation not easily broken. But each time, I stopped myself, remembering the look on her face in the restaurant parking lot. Not anger or hurt. Something more troubling: indifference. The first week was brutal. I questioned everything. Had I been too harsh? Too selfish? Too dramatic, as Jessica had accused? I replayed every word, searching for a different path. But as the days bled into weeks, something unexpected happened. The heavy, suffocating fog of family obligation began to lift, slowly revealing a landscape of possibilities I had never truly seen before. Without the constant emotional drain of those one-sided relationships, I found myself with energy, emotional energy, to invest elsewhere. I joined a local hiking group, discovering this meditative peace on mountain trails at dawn. I started saying yes to dinner invitations from colleagues I'd usually kept at arm's length, finding unexpected connections and shared interests beyond work. I even volunteered at a youth coding program, teaching kids from disadvantaged backgrounds the very skills that had given me my own path to success. And I finally started therapy, something I'd considered for years but always dismissed as unnecessary. Dr. Patrice, this incredibly compassionate woman with such keen insights, helped me understand that the patterns in my family weren't my fault, but they also weren't my burden to fix. Families are systems, she explained during one particularly illuminating session. When one part of the system tries to change, the other parts will resist, often fiercely. That doesn't mean change is impossible, just that it requires everyone's participation. And if they're not willing to participate, I asked, then you have choices to make about what kind of relationship is possible under those constraints, she said gently, and what boundaries you need to protect your own well-being. These conversations were challenging, but so clarifying. I began to understand that my worth wasn't determined by my family's ability to see it, that their treatment of me reflected their limitations, not mine. That love without respect is ultimately unsustainable. 6 weeks after the restaurant confrontation, I received an unexpected text message. Not from my mother or Jessica, but from Lily. Hi, Uncle Daniel. This is Lily. I'm using Mom's old phone to text you. Thank you for standing up for us at dinner. Mom and Dad were mad, but Zoe and I thought you were brave. Miss you. I stared at that message for a long time, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me. pride that my niece had recognized the difference between authority and courage, concern that she felt she had to contact me in secret, hope that the bonds of family might be more resilient than I had feared. I replied carefully, "Hi, Lily. I miss you and Zoe too. I'm sorry things are difficult right now between the grown-ups in our family, but I want you to know that no matter what, I love you both, and I'm always here for you. Be good to your parents, even when it's hard. And remember that sometimes people who love each other need time to figure things out." She sent back a simple heart emoji, and though I waited, there were no further messages. I hoped she understood I was trying to support her without undermining her parents, walking that delicate line between maintaining my own boundaries and avoiding putting her in the middle of adult conflicts. At the 2-month mark, I decided to send Mom a brief, non-confrontational email. "Mom, I hope you're doing well. I wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. If you'd like to talk sometime, I'm open to that. Love, Daniel." No response came, and I told myself I was okay with that. Healing couldn't be rushed for any of us. Then, 3 months to the day after the restaurant confrontation, I was pushing a cart through the produce section of Whole Foods when I heard a familiar voice. "Daniel." I turned to find my mother standing by the organic apples, a shopping basket over her arm, looking somehow smaller than I remembered. "Mom," I said, surprised but composed. "How are you?" "I'm fine," she replied, her eyes darting from my face to her basket and back again. "Your hair is different." I ran a hand through my hair, which I'd recently cut shorter than I'd worn it in years. "Yeah, thought I'd try something new." An awkward silence fell between us, filled with the mundane sounds of the grocery store. "I got your email," she finally said. I wasn't sure. I didn't know how to respond. She adjusted her grip on the shopping basket. "I'm not good at talking about difficult things." "I know, Mom." Another silence, but less strained this time. "Jessica says you're trying to turn the girls against her," Mom said abruptly. I sighed. "I've had exactly one communication with the girls since the dinner, Mom. A text from Lily that I responded to respectfully, encouraging her to be good to her parents. That's it." She nodded slightly. "Perhaps accepting this. Perhaps not. Thomas wants to cut you off completely. That's his prerogative," I said calmly. "But it would be a shame for the girls." "Yes," she agreed, unexpectedly. "It would." She shifted her weight, clearly uncomfortable. "Your birthday is next month." The statement surprised me. My birthdays had rarely been acknowledged with more than a perfunctory call in recent years. "Yes, it is," I confirmed. "I was thinking maybe we could have lunch. Just the two of us." I studied her face, looking for the hidden agenda, the string attached to this olive branch. But all I saw was an aging woman, trying in her limited way to reach across a divide she had helped create, but didn't fully understand how to bridge. "I'd like that," I said simply. Relief flickered across her features. "Good. That's good." As she turned to go, I remembered something. "Mom, wait." I reached into my pocket, pulled out my house key ring, quickly removing a small key. "I still have your birthday present at my place. This is a spare key to my house. You can stop by any time to pick it up if you want. I leave for work around 8 o'clock and usually get home around 6 o'clock. She took the key, holding it like it was something fragile. "Thank you." "You're welcome," I replied. We parted then, each returning to our separate shopping, our separate lives. But something had shifted. A door cracked open, just enough to let in a thin line of light. That night, I called Dr. Patrice and told her about the encounter. "It's a start," she said. "Remember, reconciliation doesn't mean going back to how things were. It means creating something new that works better for everyone. And if that's not possible," I asked, "then you continue building a life that honors your worth, with or without their participation," she replied. "But give them the chance to be part of the new story if they're willing to try." Over the next few weeks, small changes accumulated. My mother used the key, coming by when I wasn't home to collect her birthday gift. She left a note thanking me for the brooch, saying it reminded her of happy times with her grandmother. Jessica didn't reach out directly, but Lily and Zoe sent me drawings in the mail, their mother's tacit acknowledgement of our connection, even if she wasn't ready to engage personally. I continued building my own community, deepening friendships, exploring new interests, establishing myself as someone defined by more than just my family role or professional success. I dated a bit, nothing serious yet, but open to the possibility of partnership with someone who could see and value the authentic me. The lunch with my mother on my birthday was neither a breakthrough nor a disaster. We kept the conversation light, avoiding the deeper issues. But when the check came, she insisted on paying, a small gesture that nonetheless acknowledged my years of financial contribution. "I've been thinking about what you said," she told me as we waited for her card to process. "About actions showing love, not just feelings." I nodded, but didn't speak, giving her space. "I might not always get it right," she said hesitantly. "I'm set in my ways, but I'm trying to see things differently." It wasn't an apology, exactly, but it was an acknowledgement. And for now, that was enough. True healing, I've learned, isn't linear. It comes in fits and starts, in small moments of recognition and tentative steps toward change. Some days, I still feel the sting of old hurts. Other days, I'm amazed at how far I've come. What happened at that birthday dinner 3 months ago didn't instantly transform my family, but it transformed me. It taught me that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. That healthy relationships require mutual respect and boundaries. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply say, "This isn't working for me." I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my mother and sister. We're in uncharted territory now, slowly finding our way towards something that might be healthier or might simply be more limited. Either way, I'm at peace with my part in the story. The part where I finally found the courage to stop accepting less than I deserved. Sometimes, families break and reform into something different, but stronger. Sometimes, the cracks remain, a visible reminder of what happened, but no longer threatening the foundation. And sometimes, the act of standing up for yourself is its own reward, regardless of how others respond. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family who took you for granted? How did you find the courage to say enough is enough? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding your voice and setting boundaries. Remember, your worth isn't determined by others' ability to see it, but having the courage to stand up for that worth can change everything. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.